never thought I'd find anything strange in my late grandfather's house. After his passing, my family decided to sell it, and I was tasked with clearing out the old things. I'd spent countless summers there as a kid, exploring the woods and playing in the attic. But as I began rummaging through the dusty rooms, a sense of unease settled over me. The first day, I tackled the living room. It was filled with outdated furniture and boxes that hadn't been opened in years. I made my way to the back of the house, to a room I barely remembered, the study. Dust covered the bookshelves, and the air felt thick with neglect. As I sifted through some old papers, I came across a photo tucked inside a worn-out book. It was a faded black and white picture of a young girl, maybe around 10 years old. She had dark hair and an intense gaze that seemed to pierce through the decades. What struck me most were her eyes. They looked almost alive, watching me. A chill ran down my spine, but I quickly dismissed it. Just an old photo, I muttered, placing it aside. That night, I stayed at the house, intending to get as much done as possible. After a long day of sorting through things, I finally crawled into bed, exhausted. The silence of the house felt suffocating, but sleep soon overtook me. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of rustling. My heart raced as I listened intently. It was coming from the study. I lay still, debating whether I should investigate. Curiosity won over fear, and I tiptoed out of my room, heart pounding in my chest. As I approached the study, I saw a dim light flickering beneath the door. I froze. Who could be in there? The house had been empty for months. Gathering my courage, I pushed the door open, and my breath caught in my throat. The room was empty, but the light was coming from the photograph I had found earlier. It lay face up on the desk, illuminated as if someone had placed a lamp right above it. I stepped closer, confusion flooding my mind. Had I left it there? Suddenly, I felt a rush of cold air, and the door creaked shut behind me. I spun around, panic rising, but it wouldn't budge. The girl's eyes seemed to glimmer in the low light, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching me. "What do you want?" I whispered, feeling foolish for talking to a photograph. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a faint voice echoed in the stillness, barely audible but undeniably present. "Help me." I stumbled back, adrenaline coursing through me. I pounded on the door, desperate to get out. "Let me out!" I yelled, my voice rising in terror. Just as suddenly as it had closed, the door swung open. I fell backward into the hallway, scrambling to my feet. I didn't care about dignity. I just ran back to my room and locked the door behind me. I lay in bed, wide awake, listening for any sign of what had just happened. The whispers echoed in my mind. "Help me." I tried to convince myself I was just tired, that I had imagined it all. The next day, I told myself I'd leave the photo alone. I spent hours packing things up, but every time I passed the study, I felt an undeniable pull. I tried to focus on other items, but the memory of the girl haunted me. That evening, as I was cleaning out the last of the boxes, I noticed the photo again. I picked it up, staring into her eyes. "What do you need?" I asked aloud, half joking. Suddenly, a wave of sadness washed over me, so profound it felt like I was drowning. I realized then that the girl must have had a story, a life, a family, and something unresolved. The longer I stared at her, the more I felt an inexplicable connection, as if she was reaching out from the past. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to dig deeper. I spent the next few days researching the history of the house, looking for any information about my grandfather's past. To my surprise, I found a local newspaper archive that included an article about a missing girl from decades ago, one who matched the girl in the photograph. Her name was Lila, and she had disappeared near the neighborhood when she was just a child. The article mentioned her family's heartache and the community's desperate search. But despite all the efforts, she was never found. As I pieced the details together, it became clear that Lila's disappearance had haunted my grandfather's family for years. The sorrow in the article echoed the sadness I felt from the photograph. It was like Lila's spirit was trapped, waiting for someone to remember her, to acknowledge her existence. Feeling a sense of purpose, I decided to honor Lila's memory. I went back to the study and placed the photograph on the desk. I lit a candle and said a prayer for her, hoping to bring her some peace. "You're not forgotten, Lila. We remember you," I whispered. That night, I fell asleep exhausted but hopeful. I dreamt of Lila, her face serene, as if she was finally at peace. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from the house. I finished packing up my grandfather's things and prepared to leave the house for good. As I took one last look around, I noticed the photograph had shifted slightly on the desk. I smiled, knowing I had done the right thing. Lila was finally free, and I felt grateful to have helped her find a way home. As I locked the door behind me for the last time, I felt an unexpected warmth. The house was no longer filled with shadows, instead, it felt bright and welcoming. I drove away, knowing that both my grandfather's legacy and Lila's story would live on, finally intertwined in the fabric of time.